Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all, and welcome to our September webinar with Marguerite Sacco. It's lovely to host you, Marguerite. A little bit about you, fill in the gaps if I miss something. So you're a CTA in the organizational field. I think you're the only one in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. You're also an AI or appreciative inquiry facilitator, SAQA accredited trainer, assessor, and moderator. And you're on the International TA Association's Board of Trustees. And I know there's a lot more that you do as well. It's lovely to spend this time with you. We met, I think, in around 2006 or so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even earlier, I think. Oh, no, 2006, you're right. Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here, and I'm so excited about this because I really do love philosophy and I love playing with TA, and that's all that we're going to do today is play with TA concepts and see really looking at Plato's Cave and seeing what we can, how we can interpret it using transactional analysis. So it's really about just having fun with the notions that come to mind. Okay, let me just check with everyone in terms of time that we end. Alex, remind me, how long have I got? I think it wasn't, oh no, I can't remember.
Hour and a half, I think.
Hour and a half, that's what I did think. I did remember. Are we all good for that? Yeah, okay. We are a bit late in starting, but we'll stick to the ending time, because that is what was agreed. All right, good. Okay, yeah, I think that what we'll do is we'll just dive into the material. I'm going to show you a little video that describes and explains Plato's Cave to start with. Can you tell me who is anyone who has not ever read or know about Plato's Cave? Just to get an idea. Okay. Oh, good. Yay. That's even better. So yeah, this video is quite nice to watch because it makes it easy to follow and whatnot. Then I'm going to show you some PowerPoint slides and just unpack as we go through Plato's, and I will show you some quotes from the story of the cave, and then say what is this for you in TA, and that's how we'll do it. Okay, and the best is there's such a few of us here today that I don't have to do breakout rooms. I hate breakout rooms. I get FOMO terribly. So we can do this all just in the plenary. Thank you for that. Okay, are we good to get started? Everyone all right? Good, let's go. Okay, I need to be allowed to share the screen. Who's hosting? Is it you, Andrew? Please don't tell me it's Kirsty.
Okay, no, Alex and I are co-hosting, so I've just allowed you to be able to share.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Give me a moment to just get my slides up. Right. Hang on, I don't want the slides yet. I need to just share with you the actual video. Sorry, give me a moment. I'm showing this straight off YouTube because I'm not able to download it. I've tried all sorts of ways and couldn't download it, so it is going to be straight from YouTube, but I think that is not too much of a problem. Now let me share sound, optimize for video clip, portion of screen, and give me Plato's Cave, please. Here we go.
What is reality? Knowledge? The meaning of life? Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road or across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game, a window of opportunity, or an all too short-lived flicker of flame. 2,400 years ago, one of history's most famous thinkers, said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. Pretty cheery, right? That's actually what Plato suggested in his Allegory of the Cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic, in which the Greek philosopher envisioned the ideal society by examining concepts like justice, truth, and beauty. In the allegory, a group of prisoners have been confined in a cavern since birth with no knowledge of the outside world. They are chained facing a wall, unable to turn their heads, while a fire behind them gives off a faint light. Occasionally, people pass by the fire carrying figures of animals and other objects that cast shadows on the wall. The prisoners name and classify these illusions, believing they're perceiving actual entities. Suddenly, one prisoner is freed and brought outside for the first time. The sunlight hurts his eyes, and he finds the new environment disorienting. When told that the things around him are real, while the shadows were mere reflections, he cannot believe it. The shadows appeared much clearer to him, but gradually his eyes adjust until he can look at reflections in the water, at objects directly, and finally at the sun, whose light is the ultimate source of everything he has seen. The prisoner returns to the cave to share his discovery, but he is no longer used to the darkness and has a hard time seeing the shadows on the wall. The other prisoners think the journey has made him stupid and blind and violently resist any attempts to free them. Plato introduces this passage as an analogy of what it's like to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. Most people are not just comfortable in their ignorance, but hostile to anyone who points it out. In fact, the real-life Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, and his student Plato spends much of the Republic disparaging Athenian democracy, while promoting rule by philosopher kings. With the cave parable, Plato may be arguing that the masses are too stubborn and ignorant to govern themselves. But the allegory has captured imaginations for 2,400 years because it can be read in far more ways. Importantly, the allegory is connected to the theory of forms developed in Plato's other dialogues, which holds that, like the shadows on the wall, things in the physical world are flawed reflections of ideal forms, such as roundness or beauty. In this way, the cave leads to many fundamental questions, including the origin of knowledge, the problem of representation, and the nature of reality itself. For theologians, the ideal forms exist in the mind of a creator. For philosophers of language viewing the forms as linguistic concepts, the theory illustrates the problem of grouping concrete things under abstract terms. And others still wonder whether we can really know that the things outside the cave are any more real than the shadows. As we go about our lives, can we be confident in what we think we know? Perhaps one day a glimmer of light may punch a hole in your most basic assumptions. Will you break free to struggle towards the light, even if it costs you your friends and family? Or stick with comfortable and familiar illusions? Truth or habit? Light or shadow? Hard choices, but if it's any consolation, you're not alone. There are lots of us down here.
Isn't that just a gorgeous little clip? Just love it. Okay, so that is the cave, and now I'm just going to unpack it piece by piece, and you won't be terribly lost. We will remember what happened then, what happened next, and so on. Okay. Just quickly, before I even get into that, as you were watching that, what came to mind for you about this allegory of the cave? What did you see in it?
Narrative comes up for me, and that there are different narratives which contain truth but can never be the ultimate truth, and that there are what I think are harmonics to the narrative,
Mm.
So what was seen in the cave is not within the allegory. It's not a reality. But even what people outside the cave see is also not necessarily a reality. So that's just a different harmonic.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting, yeah, and quite disturbing idea that when we think that we have found the truth, when we change our minds and go, I used to see it this way, and now I realize I was wrong. It is that way, that we might still be in the dark. We may have just switched caves. Ah, frightening. What movie does this remind you of? I know.
It's really scary.
It's actually a bit crazy making.
Matrix.
The Matrix, yeah, Alex. That's the movie, The Matrix. Exactly. Okay, so let me share some slides with you. Wait. Okay. So my first question would simply be the projections on the cave wall. What are those in TA terms? So as you heard, he said that there are people in a cave and they are tied up and all they can see is what is projected on a cave wall by the firelight behind them. And they sit there and they give the things names as they see them go by. What is this in terms of TA? What is sort of given to us and that we take on unquestioned?
I imagine contaminations would be one way to describe that.
Would be, yeah. So can you say some more, Alex, about that?
It's where stuff that's happening in the parent and child ego states contaminate the adult, and it influences both our perception of reality, how we process it, and how we respond to it.
Yeah. So
That
what
can
about
set up
that?
stuff in the world? That it sets up stuff in terms of our relationships to people and to tasks and even to self.
Yeah. So when we say contaminated beliefs, we're talking about beliefs about self and others, right? That are contaminated, not necessarily true. We take them to be true. And that's why we say it's a contamination of the adult, either by the child or the parent ego state. Where do those beliefs come from?
Introjects.
Yeah, introjects, Andrew. And in TA, what do we call those? What did our caregivers, when we were kids, hand over to us?
Messages.
Yeah.
Both
So,
verbal and non-verbal.
lekker, beautiful, Pooja. So messages in childhood that we got verbally and non-verbally, and in TA we call those injunctions, attributions, counter-injunctions. Okay. So when I look at the cave analogy and I look at that idea, I think of us being in this place like when we're kids, we are chained to our parents. We are chained to our caregivers. We need them for life itself. And then they present on the screen in front of us what reality is and what we are and how we are supposed to be and who we are supposed to be and whether we are okay or not and whether they're okay or not. Sorry, my screen dipped for a bit. And they the messages we get, as I said, there's the injunctions, which are those don't messages. So don't be you, don't be a child, don't grow up, don't be close, don't be important. There's that whole pile of injunctions that we're told this is what you're not allowed to be. And we take that on and we just, oh yeah, okay, so I'm not allowed to be those things, I mustn't be them. And we just, that goes in, that's the rule. And then we actually start acting that out with others as well. So we pass it on. So if one of the don't injunctions might be don't be vulnerable or don't be a child, then when we're on the playground and we see a little kid and they're crying because they fell, you're such a baby. We're passing on an injunction. And we're telling that one, don't be a child, because I was taught that, and it must be the truth. And that's in the allegory of the cave, where what is described is they all sitting there chained up and they're looking at the stuff and it's going by and they're naming it and they're agreeing with each other and then they're passing it on going, yeah, that's cat, that's dog, that's how it is. That's all. No choice in that. So that's the don't messages of the injunctions. Attributions, oh, you're such a sweetheart. Oh, you're the generous one, or he's the clumsy one, or you know, those attributions that we were given as children. We take those on and we live up to them because we know nothing else. We're just told we are these things, and that's it. And then those counter injunctions, which are the things that we then do in order to get by. Because if I can't be and I can't do and I can't say this and I can't, all of those don't messages and those not okay messages, what can I do to survive? I happen to be here. I've got to find a way. Okay, so these are the do's then. What is it okay to do around here? And those are also programmed, that it's okay to be clever. That's a programming. It's okay to work hard. That's a programming. You're okay in the world if you're perfect. And only if you're perfect. So we take it on, and it's all we've got is this program. It's being projected in front of us on the wall, and we have no reference point to check it out in childhood. We're just sucking it all up and trying to make sense of it in the little child within us. Are there any thoughts you want to share? Questions? What do you think?
Something that just came up for me while you were talking was that all of this always sounds so, it sounds very, imprisoning and negative. And I know that we work with TA to overcome this as adults, to see what else is possible, to work out how we can just be ourselves without all the censoring. And I sometimes wonder whether it is possible and how it is possible to raise others and be raised in a different way. So is life possible differently?
We unchain ourselves and get the hell out of the cave. And when we get out there, then what? Yeah. So Lyle, I'm not sure though. I'm kind of hearing two things in what you've said. The one is, I don't know if I'm right in hearing a kind of a question that goes, but is it all bad?
Exactly. Yeah, that was sort of the first thing that came up. Is it all bad? Because it sounds like, okay, this is what we give to kids, this is what we were given, and it's almost like it's all bad. Is it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is so lovely, because what we're talking about is a programming and being told and taking it on without any opportunity for us to make our own decisions. And we are saying that the programming is bad. So TA, that's the basics of classical TA position, is that to be programmed means that I'm not autonomous. And if I live my life in that program, even if it's positive programming, I'm still stuck in a script that was written for me, and in script decisions that I made, but I made them as a child. So it's still not great. It's not seen as one, even if it's like a winning script. It still was like me in a cave being told success, this, that, you know, and not choosing it. So from that perspective, you could say that the classical transactional analysts would say, yes, it's all bad. And the goal of TA is to attain autonomy from all the teachings, the stuff that we took on, put into our minds. It's now outside of consciousness, and we're operating in the world like automatons that have been programmed, whether we're doing it for good or bad. It's that. And that the goal is to actually free ourselves of that and to attain that spontaneity, that intimacy, and that, what is the third one of autonomy? Hang on. Can't remember. Spontaneity, intimacy,
authenticity.
Authenticity, thank you, Alex. And when we say being authentic and being spontaneous, we're not talking about spontaneously doing things without thinking. We're talking about actually doing things by choice first. Yeah. So if I was taught to be helpful, I might choose not to be helpful now. And that was a good thing that I was taught, but maybe I don't want to do it now. It doesn't serve me. Or I can choose that because it still serves me. So it's updating the information. So I think that's the important thing, is to say some of our teachings were good and useful and can in the here and now be carried and held consciously by choice. And that might be then saying that I'm no longer in the cave, and I'm certainly not chained to my decisions and my teachings. I'm choosing my decisions and my teachings, and I might choose to keep what I was taught or to drop what I was taught, or a bit of both.
I want to add something there. Those sound like extremes, potentially. And I think it's more about a calibration. So the things that I really resonate with what Lio may have been inferring. These are necessary evils in order to get to a certain point in life. We need some kind of structure, even if it contains some contamination or dysfunction, in order to get to a point. And no analogy is perfect, notwithstanding, even when the one prisoner went back into the cave, he would not be correct in saying that what he's seen outside applies to inside the cave too.
Nice.
And he even he struggled to adjust to the light inside the cave and to see the shadows that were there. But those are a reality inside the cave too. So to me, it doesn't really matter if these things don't always serve, but it's about using them where they do serve. And that, so if you calibrate correctly, then you can be present with the reality that you are in and responsive to that, as opposed to trying to apply something that's archaic, either in terms of time or not necessarily applicable because of other things like culture, environment, and any other kind of systemic influences.
Yeah, so Alex, I think I'm kind of hearing something about us being able to say, okay, and it's about the awareness thing here, that I'm in this cave with these people who are seeing things this way. How do I adapt and work within that? And it's like not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It may be both and an integrating of maybe my beliefs with the current reality, and learning to work with it all as opposed to one or the other, and I think it's true, because if I think about, if I step into a group whose culture is so different from mine, and who are doing things that I see, Well, let's use an extreme example. Let's use female genital mutilation. It's a tradition and a culture that some people believe firmly has to be done. Females must be circumcised. I walk in there with my, wait a minute, I'm out of the cave, I see the light, I'm going to now tell you. It's a bit like in the allegory when he goes back in the cave and he tries to do that, and they all tell him he's crazy, absolutely crazy. They can't see it, they can't. So you would need to work within that system and way of thinking and seeing, and maybe change it, but you know, it's kind of working with it and integrating things. That's a very extreme example, but what do you think of that?
I think what's the incentive for
Yeah.
a cultural phenomenon? Does it serve the does it practically serve the people who are within that culture? And I mean, you can replace the word culture with religion or economic system, in any other overarching term.
Political,
What was the one you said?
Political.
Yeah,
as well.
the political system. Yeah. And I think where the incentive diminishes one or more of those three values that we talked about, so intimacy, spontaneity, and authenticity, that's where I think it's very likely the practice is something to be thrown out. So I mean, FGM is quite a highly energized topic. And I think one needs to hold, perhaps in contrast, male circumcision too, for which it's been argued it served a functional purpose. But I don't think that it necessarily exists in the same category, because the incentive might be more practical for male circumcision, but for females, I think it's about power, and I think it keeps females within those cultures subservient.
I suppose, though, in terms of this allegory, the question would really simply be who's to say who's right and wrong. What you were saying is that if it serves in a good way the people who are in that tradition, then it's okay. Is that kind of, in a nutshell, Alex, what you were saying?
No, I want to look at the other side of the coin, which I think more represents what I was saying. If a cultural practice impinges on an individual or a group's authenticity, intimacy, or spontaneity, or their capacities for that, then it's not a practice which should be maintained. And I think that's less about what's right or wrong, and it's more of an external reference point.
Yeah,
and I think again there might be different views on that depending on your insight, on whether you're inside or outside of the cave. So I think what Marguerite said, like holding both, is the tricky and really difficult solution, I think, because if you've been in that cave and then you go outside and you come back in and your view is different, then it's probably not about going back to, oh, I know how things looked before, or I know how the others see it, but combining that with, and what do I see now? What did I see outside? Perhaps sharing a bit of that, but in terms of not this is what's right, but I went somewhere else and this is what it looked like here. And also realizing what I can't see anymore. So seeing my own limitations, that I get it, that you might be seeing something that I can no longer see because I've been somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Any other thoughts? So we look at another piece of this allegory, see if we can take it somewhere a little further.
Yeah, I can take it further, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have I can't really quantify it so well yet, but there's something about this kind of argument that I think is useful, but also there's a point at which I don't think it's useful. So for instance, if you were to talk about things like pedophilia or having sexual relationships with minors, I don't think it would be, there's something, I think, in normal people which says intuitively, not cognitively, but intuitively, that's not right. So can we use the same argument as, well, you're just in a different cave, or someone's inside the cave or someone's outside the cave, and you're not part of that culture? That doesn't justify it. There's still something, I think, inherent in us as human beings that knows that those kinds of practices are not okay. So I'm using that as an extreme example to contrast the kind of this perspective that we're talking about in this webinar, and seeing, is it valid everywhere? Because I don't think it is. So you're interested to hear your thoughts on that.
You're talking about the question of universal truths, and that there are certain fundamentals that are universal, and it's about the things that we fundamentally all agree with in terms of what is good and right and what is bad. I still would even push that and say that, you know, in this allegory, if we went to another planet, like Eric Byrne invites us to look at ourselves like an alien would look at us, maybe absolutely everything that we say is wrong and bad is turned on its head, you know? We can't conceive of that, though. You can't conceive of a world in which it would be seen as right to, as pedophilia would be seen as good, for instance. We just can't conceive of that. But that's what the allegory of the cave is actually talking to, quite interestingly enough. And that's, it's just to constantly be questioning ourselves and really being like I'm an alien who's come from another planet, and look at what these people take for granted as what is good and what is bad and what is right and what is wrong. And so it you know, there's in that the encouragement to really constantly be questioning ourselves and asking ourselves if what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and what I'm believing is by free choice or not. And that's TA.
It shows up how limited we all are in our thinking and in our perceiving the world. And I wonder whether we know more of the truth, or we can bring more of the truth the more we travel from cave to cave, or the more we venture out of the cave and see different places, different planets, and bring it all together.
Yeah.
And you could probably say, well, that's still limited, but we're at least not seeing just one perspective.
Exactly.
We're gathering several.
Yeah, and isn't that just the point? That's what learning is all about. That's what we learn. That's what we're doing. We're stepping out of our caves, going maybe into other caves. But what's great is to be able to say, I get that. I'm able to get that this might be another cave, but I want to explore it anyway. You know, and just keep on exploring. And then also this awareness that, and that's what's so good, I think, about the allegory, is also about what happens, though, with a person who goes out there, sees the light and wants to bring the light into the cave and tell everybody else, I know, you don't. You know, what happens then? So, yeah. Always keeping in mind that, do we really know?
I think that is the point where I felt I'm okay, you're not okay, or that I'm okay, you're okay space is not maintained.
That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. Is that we then slip into those spaces of you're not okay because I know and you don't. Yeah.
I wonder how this relates with trusting our own inner sense of what's right and wrong. So coming back to some of what Alex was saying as well. So we can venture out there and explore as much as possible, and that may give us more insight. I also see that there's the potential to become increasingly confused, and then not knowing anymore what's real, what's right. And then there is this thing that we do have as human beings. We've got our inner feeling, right? Our intuition, our sort of that gut sense of what's right and wrong for us now in this moment. How's that connected?
Yeah, again, it's the question of where did that sense of right and wrong come from? Is it eternal, intuitive, not taught? Or is it what I was taught? Some of it we can identify easily with, that was a teaching in my family, you know, a teaching in my family, what you always say grace before meals, full stop. Those are easy to spot. And then there's the other ones that feel instinctive and feel like they really are the autonomous true me. And then you can still look at that and ask yourself, you know, is that so? And I suppose the question is, this is around truth and what is true. Because if you can then go and check your instinctive decision about what's right and wrong with somebody else's and they see it differently, then who's to say which one of us has the right instinct on this matter?
I think that's relatively easy though. I mean, if you look at a normal distribution, there will always be outliers. So it would be foolish to compare yourself to an outlier and then doubt oneself.
Yeah. You need to. There's a joke that goes, if one person calls you a horse, check it out with another person. If that person also calls you a horse, check it out a third time. And if 3 people call you a horse, enter the Durban July. I think that's what you're saying, Alex. We check it out, you know, do a proper study of the thing and not just take one point of view and go, oh, I must be wrong. I'm not seeing it all, or yeah.
And the counter to that would be Rosa Parks.
Oh, yeah, say, oh dear, say some more, maybe we shouldn't. Yeah?
Well, she refused to be a horse, rightfully so.
Yeah, it's quite intriguing. Yeah. But yeah, can we move on a bit? I don't want us to get too stuck, and we can, because I could say stuff, but I'm going to shut up. I think it's actually, the points have been made. So where to? Here we go. This is what Socrates says. However, what if among the people in the cave, certain honors and commendations were established for whomever most clearly catches sight of what passes by, and also best remembers which of them normally is brought by first, which one later, and which ones at the same time? And what if there were honors for whoever could most easily foresee which one might come by next? So in this piece, he is saying, we're still in the cave. In our conversation, we've popped out of the cave, we've run back in, we've gone into other caves, but let's come back to the allegory. In the cave, And in the cave, things are projected on the wall. We only know those things. And what he's also saying is, on top of it, when we get it right, when we're really good at spotting and seeing the patterns and what comes first, and oh, after this is going to come a chair, we get actual commendations and honors for getting it right. What is that stuff? In TA terms, what might these honors and commendations be? And again, that for me is those positive attributions, positive strokes that we get for living up to the positive attributions we're given in childhood. And it's also might be the honors and commendations I get when I go into my drivers, when I take on a driver in childhood that says, and I'm doing what mommy and daddy like me to do. So I'm okay if I stick to the script, and the script is that I must please people. And I get honors and commendations all the time for those things. So those are confirming to me that my beliefs about myself and others must be true. So that for me is where that is in the allegory. The honors and commendations are about the positive strokes we're given for how we behave in childhood. He then talks about 3 stages of liberation. And stage 1 is when you just become free of the chains, but you haven't left the cave yet. And he says, if someone even forced him to look into the glare of the fire, would his eyes not hurt him? And would he not then turn away and flee back to that which he is capable of looking at? And would he not decide that what he could see before without any help was in fact clearer than what he was now being shown? So it's the glare of the fire, you can't see properly, everything is now distorted. So you rush back and say, no, the shape's on the wall, I could see better then. And you go back to what you knew. What does that talk about in TA for us? Any thoughts on that? Or I'm happy to share that. Just wondering where you're at.
The first thing that comes to mind is the disorienting dilemma. I'm not sure if it was Mazzero or Mazzetti. It's one of the M's.
Yeah.
That spoke about the disorienting dilemma.
Yeah, say some more.
So when you're approaching change or experiencing change, it's there's confusion because what you've known as true and solid is becoming less true and solid. And it's rattling and you're unsure about then what to trust going forward. So there's a disorientation.
Yeah, nice, Andrew. It's about that, it's that, and the dilemma is in what to do now with this, because I'm unsettled. Do I keep going or do I go back to where I'm safe? And for a while there would be that dilemma, and maybe sometimes we go back to where we're safe, and then other times we step right out and go, enough, but I'm gonna let my eyes get used to this new light. Yeah, that's beautiful. What else? Any other thoughts about what it might be alluding to?
So I'll answer that question second, but I'm thinking the first bit sounds actually like a scientific process. So it's, I wasn't thinking strokes. I was thinking about decontamination. So about seeing things more clearly, identifying patterns, making sense of things conceptually, and being able to predict. So testing out hypotheses and building theories, which I think is also, as part of the process, a way of recognizing and transcending one's own biases and interjects and attributions, and getting a more accurate picture of reality. And the looking into the fire bit, I'm not necessarily sure this is where Socrates was going, but it sounds like normalization. So when you can see something outside of one's frame of reference, but actually normalize that, one can become more comfortable with it. So I'm thinking back to learning how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
No human being is evolutionarily created to do that. But you learn to transcend your two-dimensional reference point to be able to fly in a three-dimensional space, upside down, with forces of gravity, noise, or acceleration forces, and a lot faster. And you normalize that. So I think there's always wanting to get back to the previous frame of reference, but through normalization, you can actually make a new frame of reference more comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So for a while, it's disorienting. It is disorientating. Is that the word? And then with practice, it becomes the new norm.
Yeah, practice and integration. So I was thinking about the difference between like cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's I don't mean to prejudice CBT, but it might be just going through the motions as opposed to a more integrative process, which I think becomes more sustainable. So that's actually like a fundamental shift as opposed to a more of a superficial shift.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's that both and of addressing where we came from and how we got here, as well as changing behavior here and now, doing them both, not doing one and not the other. And by integrating, then the shift can be more whole.
Yeah, otherwise you're still living in the cave in your head while you're outside of the cave in your body.
Nice. Oh, that's beautiful. Too true. I love that. Well, I mean, the cognitive CBT would say, yeah, but if you live in your body outside the cave for long enough, the stuff inside the cave will come out and join you and change automatically, because it can't stay in there and you behave differently. And there's something to be said for that. I like what you're saying. I do really think that there's room for both. Nice. Okay, can I move? Yeah. Okay, let's have a look. Then stage 2 of the freedom, and stage 3 is leaving the cave and seeing the sun. What does he say about that? He says, later, however, we would be able to view the things themselves, the beings, instead of the dim reflections. This is when we're outside the cave. But within the range of such things, he might well contemplate that there is in the heavenly dome, and this dome itself, more easily during the night by looking at the light of the stars and the moon, more easily, that is to say, than by looking at the sun and its glare during the day. So what he's basically saying is, as we are doing this integrating or adjusting or going through this disorientating process, when we step out of the cave, there's all this light and there are all these different shapes and things we've never seen before. What we might in the beginning decide is that I can't do it all at once. I can look at these things by the light of the moon. It's easier for me to do that by using the light of the moon and the stars, and not in the glare of the sunlight, which completely disorientates me. And then he says, but I think that finally he would be in the condition to look at the sun itself, not just at its reflection, whether in water or wherever else it might appear, but at the sun itself as it is in and of itself and in the place proper to it, and to contemplate of what sorts is. So what he's really talking about, and I like that, is, well, if I use this, the TA again, and I think we've been alluding to that already, about starting to, so a decontamination process, but going within our own capacity and accepting and understanding, I've just stepped out of this cave. I am disorientated. How can I do this in a place of safety, one step at a time? So at the moment, I can't look at anything because the sun is too bright and it's scary and it's da-da-da. I'll look at it in the moonlight for now and let it integrate and let me get used to the light, and then until the day I can walk out in the bright sunshine and see everything in that light. And I think that's nice. There's a permission in that too, when perhaps maybe I'm given some feedback, some hectic thing about me that I'm told, and in the beginning, I don't want to see that at all. I only want to see what I believe myself to be and nothing else. So I stay in the cave and I go, no, thank you. I don't like your feedback. Or I might actually understand this, that it's disorientating, that it's painful, it's hurting my eyes, it's too bright, it's too much. But let me not throw the baby out of the bathwater. Let me step into it in the moonlight, to mix all sorts of metaphors here. And give it some space and walk around in it gently without taking it on, but just let it be with me and see if I want to take this on or not in the end.
I think what this is saying is really, it's reminding us that inner transformation can't be done from the outside by someone else. So someone might drag us into the sun and say, okay, this is the therapy or whatever, and I'm transforming you and you're going to be in here until you get used to the light. That probably works, but then we've got that actually a different cave. And we're still not autonomous. And what you're saying about those gradual shifts and choosing how much and in what condition I can look at what is again about choice, isn't it? It's about making those choices ourselves and being honest with ourselves so that we know when we're ready for which next step.
Yeah, lovely. There's something there as well, Lyle, about what is always spoken about with it's drama triangle stuff, that if I force a person into a position, I'm not believing in their ability to do this in their own way, in their own time. I'm not believing in their ability to think for themselves and to find their own way. And I'm setting myself up and that person up to fail. So, yeah, and I think so often in a lot of the work that we all do, we are very aware of not so forcing the client to change, not telling the client what we think is the right thing to do, right? It's basic like coaching, counseling, therapy 101 stuff. But what I also think is that we also need maybe sometimes to do that for ourselves. And then it enables change if we are accepting of our inability to change and the difficulty with which this new information I'm taking it on, and I don't like it, but I'm just going to let it be with me for a while. And the freedom to choose, which is true autonomy, the freedom to then choose to stay in the cave, isn't it? Or not? Guys, is it already 20 to 12? And do we stop at 12? 25 to 12? No. We're going to have to come back. Let's have a look at something more then, quickly. Oh, no. Okay. So we aren't even hardly out of this cave yet. We've been talking about autonomy all along, so I'm going to skip that. Let's go to returning to the cave. Would they not let him know, we've done this already, that he'd gone up, but only in order to come back down into the cave with his eyes ruined, and it certainly does not pay to go up. And I think that just talks to what we've been speaking about quite a lot. And in terms of script and wanting to change our script, and for me, it talks about how Sometimes with stepping out of our scripts, we will have people saying to us, you've ruined your eyes, you're doing it all wrong, and they will drag us back into script, or we might internally drag ourselves back into script because we might set ourselves up to fail. So when we decide to change something, we don't even realize that we're doing it in such a way that we're going to have a script backlash. It's going to go wrong, and we're going to go, you see, I should have stayed in the cave. I can see in there. My eyes are now ruined. I've got some quotes with this. One is Gabor Mate, who said, a child's life depends on attachment. If being authentic threatens attachment in any way, the child will suppress their authenticity. And then Steiner said, the script then is a decision the young person makes by choosing between his own autonomous needs and expectations and the pressures of injunctions he encounters in his primary family group. So this description here in the by Socrates is that we have these expectations, pressures, injunctions in the, for instance, family group that will try to pull us back into the cave, that will try to stop us from changing the script and from doing it differently. And that when we do script change work, we need to be aware that that might happen. And it's useful to talk about and think about, what if that does happen? Before I leap out there and change everything, talk about, what if that happens? Do I have a plan? Because if I don't anticipate it, then I will just flip back into script and go, there's no point. And that's proving the script belief. That's proving, yeah, you see, I always knew that I can only be this and I can only be that, and that I'm not good enough for anything else. And look, I tried to change, and now I've proved myself right. So we even do it to ourselves. It's not necessarily the family that's saying, you see, you can't do it, don't do it, you're only going to get hurt. It's ourselves that do that and disable our transformation. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm relating this back to your example about FGM, and I think if you are the only girl in the village who doesn't want that done, or who's outspoken about it, before you even get to speaking out about it, I think the threat of not belonging to the group probably overwhelms the desire to not go through the process. And I think you can apply that same kind of groupthink to political systems, cults, religions, cultures.
Absolutely, that desire to be a part of the group, our need for attachment is extremely strong. And if we have to choose between the two, we are often most likely to choose to retain the attachment. Not always, because of course we've all stepped out of that in some way or other. But how much, and what are we willing, what risks will we and won't we take? Yeah. What was I thinking of? Another example. It's gone. Oh no, it has come back. I don't know if any of you have read the book called the Swans, something Swans. It's a book about three generations of Chinese women, and in one part of the book they describe how they used to have to bind the children's feet, the girls' feet. It's so shocking. I had to put the book down to breathe when you read that. And but there it just came to mind how, because the belief was, and society was designed, that if your child, your little girl, didn't have tiny, tiny feet, she would be an outcast in society. And it would be bad. Actually, survival-wise, she would not survive. So the mother did it every time. They crushed the baby's feet, their own child. How counterintuitive must that be? They did that the whole time. And do you know what changed that system? Mao Zedong who came in and stopped foot binding. Do you know why? We need women to work in the fields, and they can't work if their feet are broken. The women didn't even change it. And the reason for changing it was actual enslavement of a different kind. So infuriating. But yeah, that's such an incredible example of how we will choose attachment and choose it for our children because it is a survival need rather than instigate change.
So what was better, working in the fields with unbound feet or having bound feet?
Definitely, I would say, let's use the allegory, that working in the fields with unbound feet might be out of the cave, but only seeing the shapes around me by moonlight. Better than being in the cave, definitely. And then as time progressed, it became fully fledged freedom. And guess what? I'm leaving the field to go and get an education, for instance. And those choices could come about because of that one change. Okay, let me share screen again. The final outcome, and if they get hold of this person who takes it in hand to free them, we have talked about this part. If the person takes it in hand to free them from their chains and to lead them up, and if they could kill him, will they not actually kill him? So what we've done in this whole journey is we've dropped the chains, we've looked at that in TA terms, we've stepped out of the cave, we've looked at the moonlight in TA terms, we've looked at the sun in TA terms. And this part is simply, and it actually ends, the allegory ends like that, which is really depressing. And I wanted to kind of put it another way around and say, yeah, but anyway, the point being that also talks for me about script and script backlash and counter script and those aspects of that we might actually, when we step out of script, the new me might get killed. And it might get killed, if I talk in psychology, psychological terms, it might get killed by myself, by the fact, and I think Alex, when you was talking about CBT, that if I have only changed on the outside and I haven't done the inner work, I will end up back where I started. I will kill the spontaneity. I will kill the authenticity, the awareness, the new awareness. Because I haven't really done the work and done it carefully and held it safely and all of that. So you can see it psychologically, or you could see it in terms of what we'd said also before about possibly, I want to change, but my family doesn't want me to change. I want to change, but my husband doesn't want me to change. And from that, we can go down a road of looking at symbiosis, cutting the ties in the symbiotic relationship and being pulled back into it by that person who wants the symbiosis, escalating their behavior. So if I'm in the symbiosis and I am the parent and adult in that relationship, and my partner is in child, and I go, I'm sick of treating you like a child, you're a grown-up, I'm going to treat you like that from now on, and I'm not doing the thinking for you, do your own thinking. They might then, to pull me back in, escalate the child behavior big time until I'm left with no choice, because it becomes actually dangerous to step in and be the parent and adult again. Or the other way around, that I no longer want to be a child in this relationship. I might say to my husband, I'm sick of being at home. I'm going out. I'm going to get a career. I'm going to become something more. I'm going to live my dreams. And the escalating would be on the parent side, telling me, you can't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't been in the working world for the last 30 years. etc., etc., and I go back into that child position, and the change is killed. It's actually killed off. Thoughts and comments? I'm just wondering about other TA concepts that come to mind in that respect. But yeah, Alex?
When you talk about symbiosis, wondering about ego state's relationship to intimacy, authenticity, and spontaneity. And intuitively, those concepts seem to relate to the child ego state for me. But then when I think of the structural diagram of symbiosis, the child in the person one down in the symbiotic hierarchy is still cathected. But I'm wondering if it's to the exclusion of those aspects, or if those aspects are not related to the child ego state. I'd be very keen to hear your and other people's thoughts on that.
So if we talk about the child ego state, it is made up of it can be divided into adapted and free and natural. And in fact, I was reading an article this morning I came across on frames of reference, and I'm going to share this with you. So in this drawing, what I haven't read the article in full yet, and I haven't looked at frames of reference in ages, which is why I was looking at it. But what is drawn here is the natural child actually over here, outside of the interaction of our frames of reference. And I just thought of that now because what you're saying, I think, what we just, if we were to draw the symbiosis here, Alex, it would be the parent and the adult and the adapted child, in actual fact, wouldn't it? That's in the symbiosis. And the natural child is not included in that symbiosis, or would it be?
Well, that diagram did help,
Yeah,
because it would explain why. Yeah, it would explain part of it, but then I'm thinking sometimes.
don't know what happened. Alex, you went mute.
My dog started taking over, sorry.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about identity, which I think is in the natural child, and surely identity is impacted in a symbiotic relationship. So I don't know if saying natural child is excluded in a symbiotic relationship is necessarily true.
Yeah, it's something I want to think about some more. Anyone else? What do you think of that?
Things that were coming to my mind, I'm really curious about this stuff, is the how with symbiosis, the person that's one down, that doesn't have any of their adults, so there isn't the ability to work in the here and now, and the intuition being so significant about being in the here and now. So that's sort of its legs are being cut off at the knees, so to speak, there. And then the other thing about physis being drawn through all of the ego states, and I suppose maybe my wish and taking some poetic license is that I want the intuition to be an integration of all my ego states in the here and now, and closely linked with physis. So I think those might sort of add to the conversation, not necessarily solve any potential questions.
Yeah, but nice, lovely stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose we need to begin with looking at what do we think the natural child or the free child, what is it? Alex, you said identity is in the free child. Did you say that?
Yes, I did. And I might not be right about that.
What do others think? Where is can we locate our identity in an ego state?
I don't think so.
What do you think about
I
identity and
think our identity is in all of them. And if we're looking just at the natural child, what is in there? It's, for me, that's everything that is unrestrained, and that can again be helpful or not helpful, and part of a symbiosis or not. So it doesn't really make sense for me to exclude the natural child from that symbiosis picture.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so if you see that the natural child can be destructive, then it fits well in the symbiosis. It's a part of it. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks. Lovely. Yeah. Phew. That is the end of the actual presentation and the Plato stuff, and we've gone on a lovely journey, which is how I love it to be, and touched on a lot of TA models, and we could go on and on and on, because one thing leads on to the next. So I'm like going, oh, okay, and then symbiosis, and then you've got discounting, and then you've got passive behaviors, and then blah, blah, blah. But we have to stop somewhere. So at this point, shall we just do a bit of a checkout? And then we can step into the light of the real world outside of this bubble that we've been in for an hour and a half. Or we could say we're in the real world and we're going to go and step back into our caves. And for some of you, that's your man cave. Oh God, yeah. Okay, so let's do this by tagging. So somebody volunteer to check out first, and then tag the next person to speak. Oh, and in terms of the checkout, maybe you'd like to say, what will you take away from today's conversation? What happened for you that you would like to take with you?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I've been playing with this desire to potentially do some further studies, so like another version of tertiary education in philosophy. So I'm loving getting this opportunity to dive into, to play with some philosophy and bring it into language that I just hold so dear, which is transactional analysis. I was going to say something about this has been relevant to a phase that I'm in, but I think that this is just constantly relevant to when you're engaging in ongoing personal development. You know, always finding, looking under new rocks and say, oh, look, there's some more of my stuff and what to do now with it. So I really loved that. There's a couple of phrases that I've captured to help me do some of those reality checking things. So the one that really snaps to mind now was that what's called the script backlash. So that rings a faint bell, but it's now on the forefront. So looking forward to playing around with this new updated language in my own work going forward.
Nice, thanks, Andrew. Who do you tag?
I think Pooja.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much, Marguerite. I really enjoyed this conversation today, and Plato's cave, allegory of it was something totally new for me, and I think that video is still playing out on my mind, and I'm staying with a thought that when you were sharing your thoughts just a while ago about where am I moving? Am I moving from one cave to another cave? Just that the cave looks different, or it's better lit there. So I'm just staying with all those. This is the image that's coming up for me. So as I was, yeah. So that's where I am. Thank you so much. I would like to tag in Leo.
Yeah, thanks all of you for this hour and a half. I really enjoyed being in this cave together with you, or in this bubble, and have the opportunity to just play with thoughts about transformation and what that looks like for us, and what's real and what's not real. And I also enjoyed that we allowed ourselves to not have answers, but really just to sort of think and explore together. So yeah, and that's what I'm taking away from this as well, actually, that it's good and wholesome sometimes to just think and explore and play things through without always having to come up with a solution so soon.
Great. Who are you tagging?
Oh, I'm tagging Alex then.
Thank you, Marguerite, and also thanks to everyone else. It seemed like we were in a cave maybe, or outside of a cave, and all kind of discussing what we're seeing, which is helpful anyway to make sense of the subject. I also like that there weren't answers, but it certainly raised a lot of food for thought. So that's felt quite in line with the philosophical nature of the allegory.
Nice.
What about you,
good.
Marguerite?
Yes, thank you. I'm tagged, and I had fun, as I always do. I love playing with TA and just going, oh, look at that. What fits? What goes with that, and what doesn't? And I wonder, and then leave it. You know, we don't have to have the answers. We can just look at it and play. And so I had fun playing with you today. Thank you for that. And I want to invite you, if you haven't seen the movie The Truman Show, it's quite an old movie now. What year was it? 1998, The Truman Show. Watch it, and watch it in terms of Plato's allegory and in terms of what we've talked about today. It's really, really fun to watch it in that light. Okay. And have a beautiful week and weekend to come. I keep thinking it's Saturday, guys. Never mind. Okay, good. Take care, hey?
So, Marguerite, if I could just say a final thank you from SATAA. So it's been wonderful to have you present for us to us today, and getting a slight tickle that maybe there could be a series of philosophy and TA coming out going forward, planting a seed with some hope there.
I've got another one, Andrew, and I can offer it. It's another one based on some philosophy stuff.
It'd be wonderful to hear about that, and I'm sure we can make some space for that in our calendar if you'd like to use SATAA.
Sure.
But again, thank you so much, and to everyone who's been here, thank you for being part of this discussion.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.